Hello there, Year 10, another podcast. Here we go. Variety and evolution. I've done a revision session on this as well, so it's either further revision if you were there. If you weren't, well, listen up. First thing to mention about variety and evolution, a very simple thing is that animals are usually, and probably always, adapted to their environment to survive. But you might get asked some examples. Unlikely, but you might do. So, for instance, a polar bear. It has thick fur. Why? So it can keep warm. It has large padded feet. Why? So it doesn't sink in the snow. Right. So, that's that. Right to mention it though. And then we're going to talk about variation specifically. So, variation is, quite simply put, the differences between organisms in the same species. So let's take human beings for instance, because we know that one quite well. Variation in human beings could be height, shoe size, hair colour, eye colour, weight, intelligence, arm length, thumb size. The list goes on. We're all different. We vary from one individual to the next, from one organism to the next. Some of them can be inherited, or some can be environmental. An environmental example might be something like my accent. If I was born in Yorkshire or in Todmorden, I'd speak like you guys, but instead I speak like the way I do because I'm from Stoke, the mighty Stoke-on-Trent. Something inherited, I'll get there in the end, it will be something like eye colour. Okay? So, now within that then, we've got two types of variation. We've got continuous and discontinuous. Continuous variation. Examples being, they're usually numbers, numerical. You can usually measure them. So, height, weight, IQ, they're all examples of continuous variation. Now, if you're going to plot these on a graph, they would follow this curve. And this is a normal distribution curve. So let's say we had height here. And we had, if we had height here, we had number of people. So if we went around Todd and we measured every single person over the age of 18 when they're fully grown, then most people would be average height. The largest number of people would be average height. So you freakishly tall people like me, there wouldn't be many of us. There wouldn't be many very, very short people. But there'd be lots near this average point. So for continuous variation, it's normally distributed. The other type of variation is discontinuous. And these are usually in categories, categorized variation. So things like eye colour, hair colour, shoe size to some extent. It's a little bit one in between, that one is. But we'll go with it for now. And if we were going to display this, went to the same people that we measured for height, and we recorded their eye colour, you would have, this would probably be brown, blue, green. You display it on a bar chart. So discontinuous data goes on a bar chart like so, number of people. And that's how you display it. So that's variation, two types, continuous, discontinuous. Right, so what the effects of variation? Well, the effects of variation, or what variation can cause, is this idea of evolution. It's quite simply is change over time. So there's some key words that help us understand evolution and get to the final point of where we're at now in terms of individual species. So, very randomly then, variation occurs, like we've mentioned. This could be to mutation in the genes, or just natural variation. Now I always use this example, but I'm not going to use a different one, or apologise for using it because it's an easy one to understand. So for instance, let's say rabbits used to have this size ears. Then one day, a rabbit was born freakishly because of a mutation, or just natural variation, like I am taller than all my peers. This one could have had slightly bigger ears than everybody else. So through variation or mutation, this rabbit's got big ears. Now these characteristics enabled it better adapted to survive in its environment. So if we take this rabbit for instance, when Mr. Fox comes along, Mr. Fox is coming in for his kill, the big-eared rabbit is going to hear the fox first always. He's got bigger ears and he runs. These are going to follow very quickly, but he's always going to be first. He's never going to get eaten. He's better adapted to his environment. He's more likely to survive. Survival chances are increased. And that's where the term survival of the fittest. He is fittest to survive. So what? So what is that if he's fittest to survive, he's more likely to breed, more likely to get chosen to breed and pass these genes on to the next generation. Because females will start to notice this rabbit because he's always getting away, always surviving. So he's more likely to breed and his genes then get passed on. So ultimately, this is evolution in a nutshell. Variation by mutations or natural variation enables some individuals better adapted to survive. Survival of the fittest. Survival chances are increased, which means they can pass their genes on to the next generation. So, for instance, in, 400 years' time, you might only have one small-eared rabbit, and the rest can have big ears. So, this one's either going to get killed or not going to get chosen to mate with. She's always running away last. So females aren't going to want to choose this poor rabbit to have their little baby rabbits with. That's evolution and variation. The last bit we're going to cover in this podcast is about genetics. Now, to start with genetics, we need to know where genetics live. And genetics, this is a cell, not a fried egg. You've got a nucleus. Inside the nucleus, you have chromosomes. Okay, one from mum, one from dad. Now on these chromosomes, you have bands. And these bands represent genes. So on your chromosomes, I'll write this down, chromosomes, you have genes. And these genes, this one could be for eye colour. This one down here could be hair colour. These chromosomes are just coloured in all these different bands, and they all represent different genes. Now these are ultimately made of DNA. But you don't need to know that yet. Just sticking with our genetics. So, what you need to know is how this variation comes about through genetic crosses. And there's some very key terminology that you need to be aware of. So, we're going to start with, let's take eye colour. So eye colour, the gene for eye colour. So you've got mum expressing one eye colour and dad expressing another eye colour. So you've got two genes for the same characteristic. So these are called alleles. Alleles. Right. So let's move forward and then look at some other. Let's just take an example of mum and dad. So mum, dad. Mum has got blue eyes. Dad has got brown eyes. So they are the phenotype. So the physical characteristics of mum and dad in terms of their eye colour, their phenotype. Mum's blue, dad's brown. First key word, phenotype. Right, genotype. So mum will have one gene from her mum and one gene from her dad. So let's say we've got small b, where big B is brown, small b is blue. And dad, let's say dad has got big B and small b. So this is their genotype. So the combination of letters they have is their genotype. We can say that this small b is recessive and the big B is dominant. Now in the exam they'll probably give you letters to use if they're asking you to do a genetic cross. So the small case letters are recessive, big case letters dominant. So we've got 4 words now already: phenotype, genotype, dominant, recessive. Now these two small b's are the same. If you get the same genes as a combination pair, then that is called homozygous. Like homosexual is same sex. Homo, same, small, or big, but they are the same. If you notice here, they are different, big B, small b. That is heterozygous. So what are the chances of, or what are the combination of their children, again, what are their icons going to be? So this is a genetic cross now. I understand this is a bit messy now. But, quite simply, you bring these down. So mum, you go B, B. Dad across the top, B, B. You draw a square, a Punnett square in fact, and you just put the letters in. So they're around what's the phenotype of their children. This one, big B, small b. Big B is dominant. So wherever's a big B, that wins. That's brown. Brown. Blue. Blue. There's a 50% chance of blue eyes. And that is a genetic cross. It's all about knowing how to put your letters in the right place and then just following it through, and obviously learning these words. Right, lastly then, there are 2 types of disease you need to know about that are passed on genetically: sickle cell anemia and cystic fibrosis. Sickle cell anemia is a recessive disease. And it's when the red blood cells look like a sickle. The red blood cells look like this. So when they're like this, they cannot carry as much oxygen. So the people suffering from this are tired. Lack of oxygen. And also they have painful joints because they don't flow through the capillaries as well, being this shape, and they get stuck, causing painful joints. Cystic fibrosis is also recessive. So that means you have to have 2 small C's or 2 small S's. If you have a big S and a small S, or a big C and a big C, you wouldn't have cystic fibrosis. You have to have 2 small ones. So they're very rare diseases. And this is when you have produced too much mucus. Too much mucus on the lungs, especially, which increases lung infection. and also the pancreas enzyme production is affected. These are the symptoms of these two diseases, but you might have to cross them. I don't know, but the principle is exactly the same. So if someone said cross two carriers of cystic fibrosis, then it would be a small c with a big C, a small c. These are carrying the disease. You haven't got it, but they are carrying it. And you do the cross accordingly. Right, have a go at the exam questions now, and I'll show you how to answer them. Cheers.